We're ranking every Twisted Metal title, and if you're not familiar with my opinions on the series, we just did a video with the lead designer and art director of Small Brawl. That was a banger-ass video, as well as Twisted Metal Black and the reboot. So as I have the best opinion on at least 3 games, we're gonna piss a lot of people off with this one, but that's okay. If you don't agree with me, you can make your own tier list. We're gonna start it off with the Twisted Metal reboot. This may be a lot of people's first entry into the series. It's the most modern one, came out in 2012. Maybe the last Twisted Metal we ever see. Who knows? We got the TV show coming up. Maybe that's gonna rejuvenate some interest in the series, and maybe we'll see a new game. Maybe it's already in development. I do like this one. The story kind of feels like you're getting a third of a story because it was kind of tacked on at the last second. David Jaffe was like, we're gonna make a multiplayer only game. We don't really want to do a story in this one. And Sony was like, you gotta do a story in this one. So they were like, okay. What you get out of the story is pretty cool. I like what they did with the green screen cinematics. That was a really awesome touch. It's like they really modernized that idea they had with the first Twisted Metal all the way back in the 90s. And it did have an online multiplayer component, which I guess was cool. I think if this had came out of free to play in the past 5 years, it probably would have done very well. But back then, you had to buy the game, play the multiplayer, and multiplayer was really competitive back then. I don't know how well the multiplayer scene was, but I do remember the combat is actually pretty good in this one. I wish it had more story. I like what you got, but you didn't get quite enough in my opinion. And the multiplayer is obviously defunct now because this game came out 11 years ago. And the servers were shut down long before that. If this was your first entry into the series, I'd say it's pretty accessible, pretty fun. I'd say it's a solid B. Twisted Metal 3. Oh boy, the
989 Studio
Twisted Metal titles. This one's gonna ruffle some feathers. Okay, so this is probably a lot of people's most hated Twisted Metal. Jaffe himself, the creator of the series, is not a fan of 3 and 4 whatsoever. I would say they're arguably the black sheep of the series, probably the most universally hated, right? Especially 3. 3 had this really weird 3D art style. I mean, oh my god, the character models, very weird. They took the story chronologically in a different direction, and the art style just kind of feels a little inconsistent and all over the place. That being said, I did cheat a little bit in this video. I did a little bit of a refresher playthrough on 3, 4, and 2, and I gotta be honest with you, dude, this one introduced some voice acting into the character bio descriptions.
There'd better be some eggnog at my winner's bosh.
And it also has Calypso kind of narrating the introduction of each level you play through. Calypso's voice, pretty spot on in this. This dude was definitely in character. He was having fun with the role.
I hope they don't mind the fireworks.
I think that's really entertaining. And they introduced some neat weapons. They had the rain missile. I like the way the car kind of shakes when you shoot the mortar out. And there's a lot of use of 3D geometry. If you play the older Twisted Metal titles, there's a lot of 2D textures, like very simple 3D geometry. Like you get an arena and everything's just kind of blocked off in very simple geometry. Twisted Metal 3 added a lot of, not verticality so much, but they added hills and they tried to add gravity and weight to the vehicles, which made your vehicle flip around a lot. But I actually don't mind the combat too much. I think it's fairly decent. I don't think the level design is great. It's okay. Like you start out in LA and you can't even tell that you're in LA. You're just in like a random highway overpass. But since they used a lot of 3D geometry, it upscales really well on emulators today, and it plays okay. Despite the fact that the story is all over the place and the art style is all over the place, and they also use passwords, which sucked. I believe this one had co-op, so you could play it with a friend. Combat's pretty good. I'm gonna give it a C for now. We'll see how we're feeling on that one, but right now I'm gonna put it solid C. The original Twisted Metal, the grandfather, the reason this entire series exists. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't like this one. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it plays. It hurts my fucking eyes. There's no ending cinematics for the characters because they cut them, so you just get a scrolling page of text for your ending. The thing is, we gotta respect it because without this game, we wouldn't have Twisted Metal, right? I don't like the way it plays at all, though. If you introduce somebody to the series with this game, they would probably trash it and not touch it again. They would probably be like, dude, this is what you were into? This game is ass. The frame rate's bad. When you first boot up the game, you can't just start up a deathmatch in any map. You gotta play through the tournament in the same series every single time. There's not a whole lot of flexibility. It's just, it's not great in my opinion, man. It's really rough. It's like the earliest of early PlayStation titles. I'm gonna give it an F. I know, I'm sorry. Okay, we gotta put some respect on its name for creating the series, but other than that, I don't think it's a very good game at all today. And we only got 4 more slots on the list, and I wanna have maybe 1 game for each category, but again, we'll see how this list goes as we kind of fill it out. Twisted Metal Small Brawl. Okay, so we just dropped a video on this one, and I'm gonna spoil it a little bit. Banger ass game. I'm sorry. It looks great today, it upscales great today, the gameplay's good, the map and level design really works well for this type of game. They did a lot of indoors, bedroom, square box type of arenas, and it worked really well. The maps had a lot of verticality, a lot of creativity, and it's overall pretty fun to play, man. I mean, I legally purchased the game to make a video on it, and I just ended up getting sucked into playing some of the same levels and characters over and over and over. The characters all played good, the specials played good, and it was made within a year. I don't know if you guys know that. If you didn't, go watch my Small Brawl video. I literally interview the guy that made the game. Very interesting story behind this one. I'm looking at the reboot though, and I'm wondering if this should be higher than the reboot. Let's place them both in B. I think that's a pretty good spot for them. Twisted Metal 4. Again, the other
989 Studio
game. And I know there's a lot of hate for this one, man, but I gotta be honest with you. This was my first Twisted Metal. At least I think it was. It had to have been. Bought this game used at GameStop when I was child. This is the game that introduced me into the series, and to be honest with you, man, it plays pretty damn good. Similar to Twisted Metal 3, it uses a lot of 3D geometry. The level design is pretty decent. There's a lot more verticality than Twisted Metal 3. It seemed like they took what they learned from 3 and really refined it, but here's the thing. They also went off the fucking walls with this one. First off, in the story, Sweet Tooth takes over, kicks Calypso out the game, so now you can play as Calypso. It takes place in the future. You got a cyberpunk Neon City map. None of the original characters make an appearance other than Sweet Tooth and Calypso. Everybody else is just most off-the-wall, oddball characters. The maps are random as hell. You going everywhere from a bedroom to, again, a cyberpunk city to an oil rig. It's like they literally were just like, okay, what can we do in this game? Let's just throw everything at the wall and then implement it. One thing I did like is that Twisted Metal 4 introduced a create a car feature, albeit very limited, but that was a pretty neat little gimmick, right? You get to make your own character and compete in the tournament, and there's a lot of cool cars in it, man. Like, you got a Mini Cooper, a Miata, I'm pretty sure this is an E36, and there's a lot of different funny voice quips you can mix and match with the special abilities, and also there's just a lot of fun weapons in this one. You got missiles that'll latch onto the characters and throw them around and then freeze them or set them on fire. You got these cluster strike missiles that'll shoot up in the air and then rain down like 6 different shots on somebody. There's just a lot of content in this one and a lot to kind of play around with. Contextually, when it comes to a cohesive art style and story, this one is just all over the damn place, but from a gameplay perspective, I think it's very fun. So I think we're gonna do a little bit of adjusting here on the list. I'm gonna give Twisted Metal 4 a solid B, but giving that the B, I'm gonna move, I'll move Small Brawl up to A, because it just gets the edge for having a consistent art style. Everything flows together really smoothly, but from a content and gameplay perspective, I think Twisted Metal 4 is really fun. I know this is gonna piss people off, right? I got 3 and 4 of the most hated games above the original, but you know what, dude? It is what it is. Twisted Metal 2, a lot of people's favorite, the fan favorite, the one that everybody thinks of when they think Twisted Metal, right? I'm not really a fan. They took the original game and they improved on it. They made the graphics better. They have a lot of variety in the levels. The story is good, and they actually added endings to the story now. But again, man, from that gameplay perspective, it's running at like this weird 20 FPS ratio. It just feels a little off to play. And by the way, I never used Twister in this game before until I just did this little refresher playthrough. Why does Twister hurt herself with the special? I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play with the F1 car. This is gonna be real cool. And then I'm like fucking dying from using my special. I'm like, what's going on? Am I just doing something wrong here? All the cars kind of feel like they're made out of paper, and that's kind of why I like the 949 games. Or is it
989?
I think I keep messing that up. I like those because they feel a little bit weighty and there's a lot of use of 3D geometry. In Twisted Metal 2, it feels like an old game. It plays like an old game. The cars feel like they're made out of paper. They just kind of zoom around the map. But it's got a much more consistent art art style and direction than 3 does. So if I gave Small Brawl the edge over 4 for that, I feel like I gotta give Twisted Metal 2 the edge over 3 for that. So we'll give Twisted Metal 2 the C tier, and then we'll move Twisted Metal 3 to D, just because it's just not as consistent. And I know somebody's gonna have my head on a damn stake if I don't put it lower than one of the OG games, so oh man. I genuinely do think 3 plays better than 2 though, man. I don't know what to tell you. Why does Twister's special literally hurt herself? Why do you get punished for using your special? Blows my mind. Okay, Twisted Metal Head On, the PSP entry to the series, and another title to have no David Jaffe involvement. Although I don't remember, did Scott Campbell help produce this game? I don't remember. I do have a lot of fond memories of Head On, but it came out at this weird time where I remember playing it on my PSP, but the servers weren't online for it anymore for the multiplayer, which fucking sucks. So yeah, I never got to experience the multiplayer in this game, but I did have a lot of fun with it. It plays really well. I think it runs on a modified Twisted Metal Black engine. There's some kind of similarities there. I think the level design was decent, and it was a portable game, so you could just take it wherever you wanted. Had a decent story, had a consistent art style, probably had a good bit of unlockables. I don't really remember. It's been a long time since I played this game, dude. Dude, I've been staring at this tier list for like 40 seconds like my life depends on it. I don't know where to put this game. I think I'm gonna give it an A because I remember it being a launch title for the PSP. I have a lot of memories of just playing the hell out of it. I'm sure I got a lot of use out of it whenever I was out and about. No other Twisted Metal title was portable at the time unless you emulated the PlayStation games on the PSP, and at that point it was like, I just kind of want to play Head On. You also have the Head On Extra Twisted Edition that has some of the cut content from the Twisted Metal Black sequel in it, so some of that kind of lives on through Twisted Metal Head On in some inadvertent way. So I'm gonna give it brownie points for that one. Leave it in the A tier. And then we have Twisted Metal Black. This is where Jaffe was like, all right, we're just gonna feed into the Twisted Fantasy thing and go all out with the dark art style. Not a lot of humor in this one, not a lot of slapstick, not a lot of crude humor, so to speak, that the series was known for. This is where they were just like straight up, I'm super serious and I'm dark all the time. Level design was pretty good, art direction was pretty good, sound was pretty good, music was pretty good. It had an online component, but man, it was unfairly hard. All the AI would just dogpile on you. It didn't really feel like a competition. It felt like you were just trying to survive against 7 other people that were just going after you, which was painfully obvious. You could tell that the contestants just weren't destroying each other. You'd be in a match for like 5-10 minutes and be like, what the hell? What is going on? So that's one thing that I did think that Small Brawl actually did better than Twisted Metal Black, funny enough. But would I say it's an S tier? If the AI was a little bit more fair and they competed with each other, I would easily say this is an S tier all day. Also, it's the most accessible Twisted Metal right now. You can buy it on your PS5 because technically it was re-released as a PS4 game. So this is one anybody can pick up and play right now. All the classic Twisted Metal games are locked to proprietary services or emulation, but if you own the console and you want to buy the game legally, this is the only way you can do it. I also feel like it's the highest budget game in the series. I'm sure Twisted Metal, the reboot, actually cost a lot more to develop than Black, but I feel like Black made the best use out of all the resources they were given. It's hard to deny the cultural impact of Black and just how big of a game it was at the time. I mean, this game sold ridiculously well. Its name carried very strongly, and it's the only one you can play on your PS5 right now. Other than, I think, Twisted Metal 2, I think that one came to their PlayStation Premium service, whatever the that is. It's not like paying for that service gives any money to the original developers. They're long gone from the studios at this point, but I'm gonna give it an S tier just solely off of how much of a quality game it is. It's a very unfair game. Personally, I think it's an A. Here's where I'm struggling with this list, man. I want to bump Twisted Metal up to an E. Without this game, none of these other games would exist. So I can't put it in the F category, but I can't put 3 in the F category because I think it still plays decently. I don't think it's totally irredeemable. And I think Black is a fantastic game, maybe slightly overhyped outside of the difficulty. Okay, I've made the executive decision to move Twisted Metal Black from the S tier down to the A tier. I don't think Twisted Metal Black is perfect enough to be considered S tier in my opinion. The AI is just too damn painfully unfair. But Twisted Metal Small Brawl, that is the underdog, man. They made that game in less than a year. They had no development time. They had to build the engine as they were going along. There's a lot of crazy stuff that went on behind the scenes. You should check out my video on that. But despite all that, it came out, in my opinion, a pretty quality game that was just dogpiled on for its art style and the fact that it was getting put up right next to Twisted Metal Black because that came out right before it. And Twisted Metal Head On, man, that was just a quality game. It was totally quality release. It was the first portable game. It was a PSP launch title, so if you had just bought your PSP, you were eating good with this one. B category, Twisted Metal Reboot was a fun game. I think it just missed the mark in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people forgot about this game. I think it sold okay and then went under the radar. I remember picking up this game from Best Buy because we needed a controller. At this point, I think I'd kind of moved on from Twisted Metal. I needed a controller because mine was broken, and they had the game bundled in with a controller, and I think it was the same price as just buying a controller, so I got Twisted Metal that way. It was a pretty high budget game at the time, but I think it was kind of a game that lacked a little bit of direction. They were kind of forced into making a single player when they didn't want to. The servers ended up getting shut down for the game because the game just wasn't doing that well. And then we had Twisted Metal 4, which I just think was a banger ass game, dude. Of course, it had its flaws. Of course, the art style, the art direction, and the story was just all over the damn place. Contextually, in the Twisted Metal universe, makes no damn sense, but I think it plays pretty good. The AI is pretty damn stupid in some areas, but graphically, I think it's more impressive than you might think. And they attempted to add some really unique features like creating a car. That was pretty cool. I gotta put some respect on Twisted Metal 2 for how popular it was, what it did for the series, and just the cultural impact it had. But I don't think it's a fun game to play. It's pretty damn rough, man. Again, I think it's one of those games where if you give it to somebody today, they're just not gonna have a good time with it most likely, unless they're just really into hardcore retro stuff. It's really hard to play in my opinion. And in the D category, I personally think Twisted Metal 3 plays better than 2, but I can understand why a lot of people absolutely despise Twisted Metal 3, and it just isn't contextually consistent like Twisted Metal 2 is. Twisted Metal 3 had some cool cars though, man. You had the SN95 Mustang as the cop car, the Jeep Wrangler you could play as a Mini Cooper. Level design was really weird though. Characters were really weird and had some really weird 3D animation, but it plays okay. And then when it comes down to the original Twisted Metal, I just think it's not fun at all to play. I don't think it looks good, but I respect it for birthing the series basically. I wouldn't necessarily call it a fail because the game obviously wasn't a fail. It was a massive success, but playing it today, extremely rough, man. And that's kind of what I think about the Twisted Metal series in general. None of these games are perfect games, and none of them are complete failures. They're all good and bad in their own special ways. But what do you think of my dog-ass Twisted Metal list? What's your opinion on the Twisted Metal series? You can drop your tier list in the comments below, because I'm sure yours is better than mine. If you're new here, I've covered the Twisted Metal Reboot, Twisted Metal Black, and Small Brawl, which includes commentary from the lead developer. So again, that's definitely worth checking out if you're into the series. And yeah, I guess from here, we're just gonna see what happens with that Twisted Metal TV show. I think that airs, so it's gonna be pretty interesting. So I figured I'd do a little Twisted Metal double upload in celebration of that. But yeah, that's about it. I gotta go cook dinner now.